Yes, Prashant. Yeah, go on. You're
Yeah,
asking something.
yeah. Rashmi. So you are going to create some resource there in portal. So if you create a resource after creating, you deleted that one, correct? So whatever amount, sorry. So if we don't delete, so how they will charge? Means whatever amount was showing on that they will charge, correct? So they will
Yes.
charge from the whatever we have free $200. They will deduct from there, or how they will deduct the money?
Yes. So as long as you have your credit amount, then they will be deducting from that credit amount. Once you are basically done with the free trial, then you will be charged from your card. Okay. But anyways, unless you basically upgrade your plan, you will not be upgraded to the next plan. But as long as you have your free credit, then there is no problem. Everything will be deducted from your credit which you have.
So you mean to say if either credit will be disbursed uh, before month, then also they will deduct
I
from my
don't get
account.
it. I don't really get your
No, no,
question.
means if we create a resource, if you're going to use and $200 we consumed, means
Mm-hmm.
now we don't have any free money,
Mm-hmm.
$200. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so after that they will deduct from my card before 1 month is going to over.
No, no. As I told you, once you once you are done with the free trial, then your account will be deactivated. It
Okay,
means
okay.
it means unless you basically upgrade it to the next plan that will be suggested by Azure, you will not be charged. Okay. You have to upgrade yourself.
Yes.
Otherwise, they will not deduct from your card.
Mhm. And if suppose if whatever we got $200, if it still exists after month is over, so we can
No, no,
utilize.
that will not exist. So once you are done with 30 days, then your credit will not be valid anymore.
Okay, valid. Okay, okay, got it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Hello, Lakshman.
Yes.
I have a small doubt.
Yes.
In before class, you created the VM.
Mm-hmm.
After creating a VM, immediately we should delete the resources. Uh,
As I told you, once you basically do testing whatever you want to do, then before you actually sign out from the Azure portal, you can delete it. But once you are done with the resource, once you practiced it, you always good to delete the resources. That is what I said.
if
So
if
delete the resources as long as you don't need them.
if we be on late, like if we delete after 1 hour, then it will be charged.
Yes, if you delete after 1 hour, and they will be charging you for that 1 hour. So that will be from your free credit what you have for 30 days.
Okay.
So Rashman, one more question. Suppose if I delete within 20 to 30 minutes, then how much they will charge?
You look at the documentation, Prasant. I already told you the documentation, how much they will charge and which size that you have used. Based on the size and consumption, the number of hours that you have used, they will be charging. And also, as I told you, when you create a VM basically comes with other resources such as public IP and disk and other resources that I discussed. So you should look at all these things before you calculate how much you will be charged.
Actually, they put for hour, but if you're not using hour, if you're having some minute like 10 minutes, so they will charge in that ratio. You mean to say?
Obviously, right?
Okay,
That
okay,
is
got
what
it.
it means.
Thank you. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so I guess uh, I guess we don't have any new participants today, right? So, anyways,
Uh,
we will.
Hi, sir.
Yes.
This is Murli here. So I'm the newly joined today here, the
Okay.
first
Hi.
class.
Okay. So you joined for this Azure administration?
Admin. Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, you're not basically joined for Azure DevOps.
No.
Okay, it's fine. So I guess you have attended the previous demos also, I hope.
So no, sir. So I want to see that, but they haven't said links to it me also. So I have to check
Okay.
it out also.
So no problem. You actually can watch them in the YouTube. So there are already videos in YouTube. So you can also ask Ashok IT team. They will provide you those videos also for you. So you can watch them. Even if you
Sure,
don't
sure,
watch it,
sure.
that's not a problem. But anyways, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So how many days it started, sir? I mean, how long?
It is just, as I told you, I mean, there were 3 demos which were happened. So they were just kind of introduction and then introductory part of the cloud. So there's nothing basically, I mean, the main classes that we really you missed. So we have started really the classes from Friday. So we have started discussing with VM creation, and then today would be the second class to the continuation of that.
Okay, so if it is possible, can you please repeat once again for like small things also, so I can understand.
Yeah, I mean, you will understand today, no problem.
Sure, sure, sure. That.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, no problem. Just a moment. Let me just check. I will just log off my work. Right. So in the last class, what we basically discussed, we discussed how we really create a VM, which is a virtual machine from Azure. And we also have seen that what are the other resources are actually created along with the VM creation. Today, what we are actually going to do, we are actually going to continue with the rest of the topics. It means the continuation from the previous class. But of course, this is also a kind of discussion, extended discussion with respect to the previous class. So let me just quickly share my screen so that you actually can understand what I'm going to talk about. So this is our subscription, what we have from where we are actually creating the resources in the Azure. And you can see in the last class, what we have created, we have actually created a VM, which is basically a Windows virtual machine, right? So how did we create? We simply went into this create a resource section. You just can click on this, and then you can actually click on create here, or else you can also search for the virtual machine. But since it is already available here, you can directly go and click on this virtual machine. So if you can see here, what we have done, we have created a VM, which is basically Windows-based VM in the last class, and we have seen the other resources which are created as a part of it. And today, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to try out with the Linux also, right? So let me just create a Linux VM. So if I actually go here, as you guys know that every resource what you create, that will be created in a resource group. So what I do, I will create a resource group, which is actually my VM. You already know this. And then come down, I'm actually giving the name to my Linux VM. So I'm just giving my Linux VM as my name. And as you already know, based on the region that you select, you will be charged. And also we will discuss this availability options. But for now, you always good to select this no infrastructure redundancy required. But we will discuss this in detail in the further classes. And also I've selected standard, so which is already discussed. And here, based on a Linux VM that I want to create. For example, if you can see, this is a marketplace where you have really lots of images based on different images. If you want to basically create a Mac OS, or if you want to basically create a Windows or Linux, you actually can select whatever the version that you really need. Okay, and you do not need to even worry about the Linux, not the Linux. You do not need to worry about the licenses also if you select a VM, because Azure will take care of it. Okay, so now let me just select Ubuntu. I have selected Ubuntu as a Linux that I want, and which is a 64-bit of VM. And then come down, as you already know that I have selected a basic standard size, which has 8 GB of RAM, and it basically I will be charged $84 per month. Okay, so now you can see there is authentication type, but here you don't know what is SSH public key. But I try to use a password, but we will discuss this SSH public key in detail in just a couple of minutes. So I'm just giving some username. So let me just go and say I'm just giving some username and password. So just, yeah, and then you can come down. I already told you that the inbound ports. So the inbound ports we did not discuss yet, but we will discuss in detail. But if you can see the inbound ports which are selected here, SSH. Okay. But yesterday, I mean, in the last class, as I told you, there are a couple of tabs which are basically available. If you basically go to disks, and it has the disk details with respect to your VM that you are creating, and also the networking section. As I told you, if you can see, by default, it is basically selecting, it is creating a virtual network, which I already discussed. So this is not discussed in detail, but we will discuss the networking in detail with the networking concepts. So anyways, you can also see that network security group, as I told you. So whenever you create a VM, you will also be creating the network security group and so on. And you are actually selecting, you are basically giving SSH port 2022, but we will discuss what exactly is this. But for now, I'm not actually discussing all this stuff. I'm quickly going review and create. And once I basically do this review and create, it is actually going to create a Linux VM for us. So if you can look at here, it has validated your options, whatever you have selected so far. And then it also gives you the details of how much you will be charged per hour. Okay, so now let me just go and create my VM. So now I want to really access my Linux VM once that is basically created, but let it be created, and as soon as it is created, I would like to drive to those resource group, and I can show you which resources are actually created as a part of this particular deployment of the Linux VM. So you already know, whenever you actually create a VM, so by default, it will basically create a couple of resources. We will see that which resources are created. So for example, if you can see, this is a resource group. If you remember, we have created this My VM resource group as a part of this VM deployment. You can see these are all the resources are actually created as a part of the VM creation. This is already explained in the previous session. Okay, but if you guys did not go through the previous session, please go through the previous session, then you actually can understand it. But anyways, so yeah, and we already have discussed a couple of options also. Here. You can see that if I actually go to my Linux VM, you can see which location you have selected and what is the subscription, in which subscription you basically have created your VM, and what is the public IP address which is actually deployed as a part of your VM, and also the default virtual network which is created as a part of this VM. So this is something. So it will be present. Just a moment. Let me just refresh it. You can see the network security group. So if you can, so if you basically can see this, so this is basically what we discussed, and let me just quickly go and try to connect. You can see that if I want to connect my Linux VM, I actually can go here and you can click on connect, and you can see that there are various ways basically that you can connect to your Linux VM. So basically, if it is a Linux VM, what you are actually going to do is you are going to use SSH connectivity. And if it is a Windows VM, you are actually going to use RDB. But I will tell you what exactly it means. But you also have one more method, which is actually called Bastion. So I will discuss this Bastion later, but not now. But we will also be able to connect via this Bastion option in order to connect your VM. So I can quickly go and can connect. So for that, what I try to use, you already know that I am actually going to use my public IP, but how do I basically connect? Okay. If you really want to connect to a Linux VM, there are many ways, but a simple way is that you actually can download a putty tool from the internet. So it is quite simple, a tool. I mean, if you basically go and search in the Google, putty download, you can see for which OS you want to basically download. You can simply select the putty and you can download. It is just for free of cost, and it is quite simpler and straightforward installation. Okay, so what you are actually going to do, whenever you basically select here, whenever you open this putty configuration, you can see the host name or the IP address, right? So which IP address that we have to use? As I told you, in order to connect a VM, which is basically in the cloud, we really have to access using this public IP. So I'm actually going to use this public IP here, and I'm going to give simply the VM IP address. So you can see this port number, which is 2022. I'm sorry, 22. I will discuss this in detail. Okay. So let me just go and say open, and it is asking me that you want to connect. Yes, you want to connect. Go ahead and do it. So you can also say yes or no. This is something the settings with respect to putty, but your username and then your password. Okay, so this is as simple as that. Your VM is basically connected. You can see that if you really want to change the settings for your VM, what you can do, you can change settings in the putty of yours. So you can see I have basically simply ran my VM. I mean, I have connected to my VM. You can also see that my Linux VM is pretty much ready. Okay, so now this is something that how you can connect to your VM, a Linux VM. So because I've used Linux VM, which is Ubuntu, now I want to discuss a few more things with respect to this VM. So what I would like to really discuss. So if you can look at here, so I already told you this CLI, PS, there are commands. You can also execute few things via command line interface, but you can basically check this CLI, PS, but we will also discuss how to create a VM using the AZ CLI and so on, but later, but now let us focus on what we really want to discuss. Okay, this is simple, that as simple as that you have created a Linux VM. Okay, so what I want to show you, for example, let's say you basically want to, you have selected a size of a standard D2 SV3. Okay, so let's say there is a requirement that you have actually got, that for some reason you want to have a more powerful machine which has higher configuration. Okay, but your VM, whatever the VM you have actually deployed, this is already deployed, and then this deployment, this VM is not able to really give you the performance that you have expected, because this is just only 8 GB of RAM, and then maybe 20 GB of hard disk and so on, but it is not really as powerful machine as you really want. Then let's say you really want to change your size. Okay, what you want to do, you really want to change your size of the VM. How can you do that? Okay, so if you come down here on the left side of the VM block, and you actually can come down here into the size of the VM that you have selected. Can you see that the current size is basically standard underscore D2S underscore V3? And for example, you can see that each VM, whatever the sizes you really have been listed here, and based on the size, if you really need more powerful machine, let's say you want a 16 GB of RAM, then you want to basically go for this particular, size. How can you do it? For example, let's say what I want to do, I don't want to go to higher performance configuration because I will be charged. So what I do, I can do the same way if I want to go even 16 GB of RAM, but I actually, instead of going up, I am actually reducing my size, okay, to 3.5, and I just need only one CPU and so on. And as soon as I select, I actually have an option called a resize. Yeah, and you simply say that resize. But let's see, my VM is already running, right? So you can see that my VM is running. What happened? As soon as I really started resizing my VM is pretty much lost the connectivity because it is actually resizing the resources that I actually opted. Okay, so that is the reason why the connection is lost, and now the size will be actually applied to the existing VM. But let me tell you one thing, the only reason that I actually kept my VM running and showed you. So for example, if I go to overview section, you can see still you can see this 8 GB of RAM. But you have seen that you are basically your size is resized. You can see that resized virtual machine, but still I can see that the display is still a standard size. Let me just refresh it and see. So I want to see whether the size is basically changed. Can you see this? So you can see your Linux VM size is resized to the selection of your VM, but you should know the reason that while you are actually changing the size of the VM that you really have used, for sure you will be losing your network connectivity. Okay, somehow your VM will be under maintenance for some time, for minutes, for seconds. So you should know this point. That is the reason why I did not stop it. Ideally, what you actually can do it, I can stop my VM and then I can resize it and then I can restart it. But what I did not really stopped it, and I want to do it online. That is the reason why I did it. So now my VM got disconnected. Now what I can do it, I actually go to the taskbar of this putty, and then I will say restart session. And now I would say again, I will actually give my username and password. Then I will be connecting to my VM back again. But now this time my VM size is not really 8 GB of RAM. It is just only 3.9 GB of the RAM. So that is a one point that I would like to show, but it is always good to really stop your VM and then resize your VM and then start it. Okay. So though you did not do that, for sure, there would be a little connectivity loss during your resizing process. So better you always, do as a maintenance. It means you basically stop it and then you do it and then really start your VM. So it is just a kind of process that you always can follow. Okay. And one more thing. So let me just, this is a Linux VM that I wanted to show. What I try to do it, I simply go in here and I will delete my my whole resource group, because I want to create one more Windows VM. So I wanted to show you. So you simply just go and delete all the resource groups. So if you select delete all the resource group, it will delete all the resources within the resource group. That is the best way of cleaning up your resources all the time. Okay, so what I do it now, I quickly go and create even one more VM also. So that VM actually going to have the Windows VM. So let me just go and do that. So this time, what I want to do, I want to create my Windows RG. So I'm just giving a name. So maybe my RG, something like that. And I will give my Windows VM. Okay. So then let me just go, and I'm actually selecting no infrastructure redundancy. And this time I'm selecting Windows. So I want Windows, and I also want to give the username and password. So I'm just giving my username and password. Yeah. So you remember before it was actually SSH 2022, which was selected, but this time it is RDP 33989. I'm sorry, 3389. So I'm just simply saying review and create, because as I told you, these are all different options which we have. So let me just go and create it. So now what I really want to show you. Let me just open my whiteboard. So whenever you really have a VM, okay, so as I told you, I am the developer. Okay, now I am the developer, and now I have a VM located in cloud, which is Azure cloud. And then I have a VM, and as I told you, a VM contains a network security group, which is basically called NSG. And VM also contains a public IP. As I told you, it has a public IP. So public IP. And then whenever I want to connect, I'm actually using a public IP here. So I'm using the public IP. I'm using a PuTTY tool to connect to my VM. Okay. So now if you can see here, there are two things that you might have seen. Whenever you create a Windows VM, so whenever you create a Windows VM, what you have seen a port called 3389, which is RDP. Okay. And when you create a Linux VM, and you have seen a port called 22, which is SSH. Okay. So it means whenever you want to connect a Windows VM, you are connecting a Windows VM using RDP port number, which is 3389. 3389, which is actually called remote desktop connection. Okay, remote desktop connection, which is using RDP protocol. So this is basically a program which will allow you to connect remotely to a Windows machine. So that is the reason why it is RDP, which is a kind of program which is actually called protocol. And this protocol contains a port number. So it means whenever somebody says that you are using 3389, it means you are remotely connecting to a Windows machine. Okay. Now, whenever you are connecting to a Linux VM, which uses SSH connectivity, okay, SSH connectivity, which has a 22 as a port number. As I told you, for Windows, which is a 3389, for Linux, which is 22, which is actually called SSH. Okay. So now the reason that why I was actually discussing. So yesterday I told you, if you want to really connect to a VM, you're actually going to connect using this public IP. But if you have a public IP, does it mean that you can directly connect to the VM? Not really. As I told you, NSG, Network Security Group, which is a group which contains the rules to allow or disallow the people to really connect to the VM. Okay. So this NSG group should allow this particular port number to use in order to connect to VM. So let me just say that whenever I am connecting to VM using this port number, okay, from the point of view of VM. So what is the connectivity which is actually called inbound connectivity, right? So from the point of view of VM, whenever you are connecting to VM, that is actually called inbound connectivity to your VM. And whenever you are actually, connecting from the VM to the outside, then what is that? It is outbound connectivity from the VM. Okay, so the inbound connectivity from the point of view of VM, which is actually called inbound, and when you are connecting from VM to the outside world, which is actually called outbound connectivity. Okay, now inbound connectivity. So this is basically called inbound rules. So the inbound rules are nothing but you are creating some rules. Those are actually called inbound rules to really allow the traffic to your VM. And you are creating some rules to allow traffic from the outside of the VM, which is actually called outbound rules. So that is the reason why these are actually called outbound rules, and these are actually called inbound rules. So these are the rules are actually created as a part of network security group. Okay, so now let me just quickly go, because my VM is created, which is a Windows VM. As I told you, whenever you are connecting to Windows VM, you are connecting via the RDP port number. So let me just go and then click on come down, and then you click on this networking section. In the networking section, you can see that there are some rules, inbound rules and outbound port rules. So if you can look at here, inbound port rules are the rules which are actually you are allowing or disallowing to the VM. Okay, and outbound rules are the rules which are actually you are basically allowing or disallowing the rules outside of your VM. So by default, you can see that there are pretty much few rules are in place. Yeah, and you can also see the RDP rule. Okay, so the RDP rule. So anyways, we will discuss these rules in a bit, but let me just check in what exactly is RDP. So as I told you, so whenever you are connecting to your VM via your public IP, then you should have a rule in place to allow this port number to connect to your VM. So that is the reason why you can see that there is a rule which is in place, that the RDP, which allows a port number of 3389. Okay, so you can see that you are allowing to VM to connect, to use this port number to connect to your VM. Okay, so let me just check what I try to do. I will basically delete this. Okay, I will delete this, and now I try to connect the VM. Okay, so let me just refresh it. I guess you can refresh it here. Then the RDP rule is gone. So there is no any inbound rule to connect to your VM. So RDP rule is actually gone. Now what I try to do it, I try to connect. You can see the RDP rule is actually gone. So now I go to overview of my VM, and then I can click. I can quickly go and select RDP. And I already told you, you select RDP and then click on RDP, and you can also click on this, and then it will give you connect. Okay. Now let's see. I'm trying to connect. Okay. So I'm just giving username and password. In fact, it should not allow, but it is not refreshed. So it is connected. It is connected, but still it is taking, so it is getting refreshed. So in order to make your rule active, it takes a bit time, maybe 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Due to that reason, see now the rule is really active. So that is the reason why, though we have given the credentials, it is saying that remote desktop can't connect to your remote machine. Okay, remote access to this server is not enabled. Okay, so this is something that why do we need to allow the inbound traffic to really access your VM? If you are basically accessing via RDP, then RDP protocol, RDP port number, you should allow to connect to your VM. Okay, so now let me again go back to my networking and then actually go and say I'm actually going to create RDP. So you can see source, so any, for now let it be source any, because I'm not actually going to talk about this network security groups now. We will discuss later when we're talking about the networking, but here I'm selecting any and I'm any, so I'm actually giving here 3389. Can you see? So from any source to the any destination, which on which port number you have to allow? On 3389 port number, you have to allow to really connect to your VM. Okay. So now I'm just saying allow, and now I'm saying add. So let us basically create this security rule and try to connect again the RDP connectivity to the remote VM. So this is connected. It just takes time. So you see that the network security group rule is actually created. Now let me again go back to overview section, and then I will actually go and take the public IP. But before, what I told you you can come down and click on this RDP, then it will download a file and you can select that file and you can actually access it, right? But there is also other way that you can do it from your VM, from your laptop. You take the public IP and you have a RDP connection, remote desktop connection. If you search in your laptop, you can see there is a tool called remote desktop connection. You can simply give the public IP and you can simply pass your username and password. So now you should be able to connect to your VM because you have allowed the inbound rule to the VM. Okay, so this is with respect to the NSG, the inbound rule. So remember one thing, if you have any connectivity issues anytime, please make sure that you really have this network security group inbound rule to ensure that there is really a connectivity rule in place. Okay, so this is something with respect to NSG rule. So for example, if you create Linux VM, then you should be basically allowing 22 port number as SSH. Okay, so if you don't create a rule, an inbound rule for SSH connectivity to your VM, then you will not be able to connect to that VM. Okay, so now my VM is getting ready. So before that, what I would like to also talk about a bit, I talk about a bit regarding this NSG other rules. So as I told you, whenever you see this networking, so did you create this? Not really. These rules are actually called default network security group rules. Okay, so whenever you create a VM, you have also seen an NSG is created. So NSG contains default rules defined by the Azure itself. Okay, these are actually called default rules. So if you can look at here, so by default, there are three rules available. You can see that what will be allowed and what is not. Okay, so maybe, for example, if you can look at this particular rule, by default, everything will be denied on your VM level. Okay, this is a default rule basically created by the Azure. So it is always suggested to keep these rules in place. Okay, and then thereafter, what you also have maybe two other rules. So you can see that there are other rules, but you will not be able to understand at this point of time. But we will discuss in detail. But for now, what you keep in mind, you keep that in mind that these are actually called default rules created by the Azure whenever you create a VM. Okay, so this is something with respect to inbound rules. So if you say that from the outbound rules, you can see that by default the outbound rules you can allow. Okay, you can allow to connect to the outside world, so you can connect to the internet. So by default everything is denied at first, and thereafter there are rules in place to really allow to connect to the outbound internet. Okay, so these are actually two inbound and outbound port rules which are available, but we will discuss these in detail when we actually talk about this networking section. Okay, but anyways, I guess I have created my VM, and now my VM is ready. So if you can look at here, so my Windows VM is pretty much ready. So now what I do, I simply do few things here. Okay, so I close this. Now I really want to install some basically feature. Okay, for example, what I do, I actually go. So I have a VM. I have a Windows VM. Yeah, and in the Windows VM, what I want to do, I want to create a web server. What I want to do, I want to create a web server. So if I want to create a web server in Windows, what I can do, I can enable a role called IaaS, Internet Information Service. Okay, if I want to install a web server in the Windows, then I can create a role called IaaS role. If I basically create IaaS role, which is actually called web server, because IaaS is basically meant for Internet Information Service, which is actually acting as a web server. Okay, so let me see what I try to do. I try to install this IaaS in my Windows machine. Let me just check how can I do that. So if you want to create IaaS, so you can click on this add roles and features. Okay, so you can install anything. I'm only just showing an example. How do I install a web server? Okay, so now I went here and I go to next, and then I simply go to the next, and I actually go to next, and here you can see that there is a role called web server IaaS. Okay, I select web server IaaS and click on add features, and I simply go next, 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 and that's it. So if I actually do all this next, and install, then it is actually going to install a web server in my VM. Okay, so what does it mean exactly? So what will happen? So let's say I have a VM. I have a VM where I have installed IaaS server. Then it is actually called a web server because I have installed a web services. This is basically web services. So now I'm a developer. Who am I? I am a developer. So now let's say I have a website. Okay, I have a website. Then I want to basically keep this website in here because this is a web server. Then I simply create a website. I keep a website here. Then let's say there is a user. Okay, you are the user, and now you want to connect to this VM. Okay, but now let me just check if you have deployed your website into this IaaS after you have enabled IaaS web server. Then you want to access your website. So on which port number you access the website? Okay, let's say you will access your website at port number 80. Okay, at port number 80. Then you want to access this IaaS. So your website, okay, in your Windows, wherever you actually have created your website. Okay, this is located in the Azure. Now let us do that. How do we do that? So I just want to see that how can I do that. So I guess this is complete. Now it's complete. Once you complete, you actually can go. There is a location you get created. Now if you go to Windows C, and there is a folder called initpub, and you also see www root. And now you can see that what I try to do, I try to create a file, okay, simple HTML file. So here you can see, okay, so just let me say, this is my hours bank portal website. Okay, so I just have given simple this, but I want to save as HTML file. Okay, so what I do, I say default dot HTML. So let us assume that this is the real website. Okay, you might have maybe 100 of HTMLs and other things, but in my case, I have a simple HTML file. So you can see I saved it, and if you save it, you see that there is a HTML file. If I click on here, you can see there is a HTML page. I can see that this is Hours Bank, portal. So, but anyways, my requirement is, so I have created a web server, and I also have created a website with a HTML file, right? Now I want to access this web server, right? So I want to access my website. My website is running at port number 80. My web server is running up at port number 80, right? So now how can I basically access? I access the same way. So I go to overview section, and I go to my public IP, and then I copied it and pasted it, and I've given 80 here. Okay, but now I 80 and I say default.html, because this is the default.html I have created in the root directory of the web server where the website should be deployed. Okay, so now I click on this, and somehow there is a problem. I can see that I am unable to access the website. So I am unable to access the website. But can you tell me, can anybody tell me, you just ping in the chat, can anybody tell me what is the issue? What is the issue that why I am unable to access? The site can't be reached. Can somebody respond? So if you don't respond, then I will say answer. So the reason, yeah, okay. We did not give permission. Inbound, yes. So inbound need to open 80, because as I told you, the web server should be accessible at port number 80. What we are doing, we are accessing. So from the point of view of VM, the VM is actually getting the inbound connectivity to the VM. So you have to allow the port number 80 to really connect to the VM. Okay, so now what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to create a rule which will allow port number 80 to connect to your website. So to your web server. Okay, so now click on this add inbound port rule. So any now I'm actually giving 80 here. Okay, so I'm just giving 80, and then so I will simply add this. Okay, so I allowed it and I just added it. It is actually going to add my rule. So as soon as this rule is really active, then I should be able to access my website. Okay, but now the site can't be reached. The rule is actually created. Now let me just refresh it. Okay, so then I should be able to access my website at port number 80, because my web server will listen at port number 80. So let us just wait and look at the port number 80. So as I told you, it would just take a bit time. So let me also refresh it. So, so this is something that I am actually going to refresh it once again. But let me also check whether the file name is the right file name that I am actually searching. So this is default, right? So then default is a spelling also right. So now, can you see this now? So this is my Hours Bank portal website. Okay, so it means The only reason that why I actually explained you this, because in order to make you understand what is basically an inbound rule and what is basically outbound rule. Always remember, whenever you are actually dealing with inbound traffic and outbound traffic, you always remember that you always have to look at the rules that you define in order to allow the traffic and to the inbound and also to the outbound. Okay, so this is something that what I really wanted to also show you. So what I can give you, I can give a task for you guys. What you guys do, you create a VM, Linux VM, and install maybe an Nginx. Nginx is also one of the web servers. So you install Nginx web server that will also run at port number 80, and try to basically look at the folder where you create the HTML files, and then you create it and try to access it. Why given 111 port as I missed for 2 minutes due to network issue? So there I did not give any 11 port number, 111 port number. So port, that is not a port, that is just only priority. So if you can look at here, the priorities are actually given based on you basically create the rules. Okay, the port, the inbound rule that we have selected is 80. Okay, anyways, this is something that what I really wanted to discuss. And also there is one more 2 points that I would like to discuss in this particular session, which is, if you can open a Windows VM. Okay, so if you actually go to your VM, you can see that you have a Windows C, which is a drive which we have selected, right? So which is a 126 GB of data, 126 GB of the disk. Okay, so this is actually called operating system disk. Okay, if you want to add, you can also add more disks that we will see anyways. So you can see that there is also one more disk called temporary storage disk. Okay, so a disk which is only meant for temporarily. So what does it mean? What does it mean? It means that, for example, if you basically create any files here, okay, so let me just say that I am actually going to create a file here, my file, and then I'm actually going to write some content and whatever the data I have. So let me just go and cancel this, and I'm done. I've created a file in the temporary disk. Now what I want to do, I really want to stop this VM. Okay, so let me just stop it. So then I'm basically stopping my VM. Anyways, once I stop, I cannot even access my website also, because that website is located in that web server. Anyways, now the interesting part that what I really would like to show you here, this is something that what I wanted to show you, which is a de-allocating. So what does it mean? So whenever you basically stop the VM, it is actually de-allocating the resources which are actually bound to your VM. In this point of view, what exactly it means, as I told you, whenever you create a VM, you have a data disk and also a temporary disk. So it means what happens, as you basically stop your VM, then whatever the temporary disk which is actually connected to your VM will not be anymore exist for the next boot. For example, what I try to do, I try to again start my VM. Okay, so once I start VM, as I told you, I should not have the data which I created in my temporary data disk, because that is only temporarily available for your what you call the VM. So if you really want to keep your data, please make sure that you really keep the data in a disk where the disk is really attached to your VM. So now I guess I have basically created it. Now let me just go and then connect again. So I guess this is the one, the same, and I would give my password. So So now as soon as I connect to my VM, and I should not be able to see my data, which is actually created under the temporary storage disk, because as I told you, when we stopped our VM, it means that it basically deallocates the data, the disk from the VM. So please make sure whenever you are actually doing some things, you always keep you always keep your data in the disk where you can actually, connect it. So now if I basically go to my disk, so now let me just go to temporary storage. Can you see there is no the data which was actually created in the before VM, before it was deallocated. So this is something with respect to the data disks called a temporary data disk, and also the operating system data disk. So tomorrow what we actually going to do, we are going to we are going to attach the additional disk that we want, and we want to make use those disks. And also we will see few more topics such as encrypting the disks and so on. So this is something that what you actually can do. So I guess, I hope you understand today's topic. So tomorrow we will again discuss further more details with respect to this VMs. Yeah. So do you have any questions so far?
So if you want to keep the data, is to keep in C drive, you mean to say?
As I told you, you can basically attach more disks. Okay, so you can attach more disks, and then your data will be safer there. So the temporary disk will be deallocated, but if you attach more disks, then they will be only attached as soon as you connect back again. Okay, we will see that later.
Okay, so 1 minute, sir. So whatever you have shown there, C and D drive, both are temporary, or only D is temporary?
As I told you, this is D is temporary, because always the operating system disk will not be detached, right? So operating system disk is basically what really we need in order to boot our system. So if at all you want to see, for example, I go to C, you can see that I need pub and then go to your folder and I have my file. So it means it is not deallocated, right?
Yeah. And so and if we stop my deallocate my virtual machine, then also they will charge, correct?
As I
Until we
told
do
you, you deallocate VM, but the other resources basically still exist. That is what I told you yesterday, right?
Okay. And one more thing, sir, can you go to resources folder? There in Azure portal. Yeah, there we have open one
I'm
resource.
sorry, this is not the one. My IT. Okay.
Inside
Yes.
one we have like security group and this disk where so if you open this, yeah, so here
This
we have
one.
this last one we have disk. So what
Uh-huh.
exact use like this?
Okay. So you have a laptop, Prashant?
Yeah, I have laptop here.
You have a laptop, right? You have operating system. You have operating system. Your operating system is located in your disk, right?
Yeah.
The same way, it is as simple as that. So as I told you, I explained yesterday that if you really create a VM, it means that you need to have the resources that are really required. When you purchase a laptop, can you basically purchase a laptop without a disk, without a storage? No,
Yeah.
not really, right? So it requires a disk to be coming with your VM.
Okay. So but in VM also we have some space, correct? Whatever disk we choose.
Yes, that is what I've showed you. I mean, we have 128 GB of disk.
Yeah. So like if we have that disk, okay. So you mean to say for this VM to store we need below disk?
I don't get it. What?
I'm like in the VM we already have some disk, correct, to store some data. So like last one, whatever we have typed disk, correct. So this disk is used for to store the VM, or how? I didn't. I'm actually confused between two disks. Like in VM also we have disk, and here also last one also we have disk.
So yesterday I told you one point from the point of view of Azure. So they treat these resources as individual resources. But for us, when we create a VM, the VM needs all these resources. When you basically purchase a laptop, so how do you pay? I mean, how the prices actually would be decided. So you want to take a 1 TB of storage for your laptop, or else you want to only go for 256 GB of storage. Then based on the disk that you choose, you are billable, right? From the point of view of the manufacturer, so there are individual resources for the manufacturer. But for you, it is just a laptop contains all these resources coming along with your laptop. The same way, from the Azure point of view, they actually look at all these resources as independent resources. Okay, so the disk basically comes with your VM, but VM is not actually stored in the disk. VM needs the disk, so that the disk is actually showing as a separate resource here. That is it. Still got confused?
Okay. Means after connect with VM, so below this you will use.
Yeah, that's basically,
Got
yeah,
it. Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Hello, Lakshmi.
Yes.
I have some small doubt. We have created the VM, and if we want to access, if another person want to access this VM, then he should have the outbound rules, right?
Why? He wants to access, right? He wants to access VM. If you want to access VM, what rule you will have? You will have inbound. As I told you, that is what I told you from the point of view of VM. So for VM, it is an inbound traffic, right?
Okay.
So for the VM, it is an inbound traffic.
Okay.
So you need to create an inbound rule. Okay.
Then what is that outbound rule?
Outbound, for example, let's say you have your VM. So your VM, you have restricted everything. You did not allow traffic to outside. Okay. You only want to allow your VM to connect to a particular port number. Then how do? You will create an outbound rule.
One so outside this system is what you want to say, like for outbound rule.
Yeah, that's true. So let's say your VM needs to connect to other database. Okay, the database port number, let's say, something like 33, for example, not 33 actually. So 33. Then what you do? Your VM should connect to 33. So your VM should be able to connect to 33 port number. You should create a outbound rule.
Okay. Means to connect with outside resources, we need to supply the
but by default, as I told you, it is outbound rule. Outbound rules are actually allowed, so it can connect to internet. But if you block everything, then you need to explicitly create rules for you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, guys?
Sir,
Yes.
So you took a subscription as a real-time hub. Without any subscription, we can't create VM in cloud, right? Azure?
No.
So what is that subscription? Just name, or is there any?
As I told you, I explained in one of the demos, a subscription is a plan. Subscription is a plan which you will be billed out. Okay, so you, for example, you purchase a subscription from Netflix. What is that called? That is a subscription, right?
Yes, sir.
So based on the subscription, you will be charged.
Yes, sir. But actually, I missed that maybe. So how to create that subscription?
Please watch the previous video, Vijay.
Okay.
So I already showed you that how to create. If you create an account, then
Okay.
your subscription will be created.
Okay.
If you select free, if you select free tier and then create an account by giving your card details, then automatically your subscription is a free account. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Lakshman, if it is a free account, when I click on the subscription, I get the free tier.
Yes.
That is.
Yes.
Okay. Actually, when I creating the account, it didn't ask about the subscription. Directly it asked about the bank details. I signed up before.
but you might have selected a free tier, right? Yeah.
Actually, I signed in before only before 1 week before.
But if you, I don't know if you had selected something else, but in my opinion, if you basically select the free tier and then go on, and it will ask for the card details and you will enter, and then you are good to go. That's it.
Inside subscription, it is showing a free tier.
Yes.
When I click on the
yes, if you look at there, you will see the free tier and which is active in status.
Yeah.
Any other questions, guys? So, Murali, are you able to follow today, or did you feel any difficulties?
No. I understood that. So I can able to learn the real learn. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. So I'm just deleting my resource group.
So for Mac, we should use shell script.
Why? You can directly access the portal, right? You can use the portal.azure.com and then you can create whatever we are doing here.
No.
Mac,
for connect with VM. So you are going to RDP, correct?
Yes. So you download that RDP file and then you can connect.
Okay. From browser only. Okay, that will correct. Yeah, correct. So we don't have RDP in the first. Some restrictions are there.
Okay.
Yeah, hi Lakshman. We created a Linux environment, right? So for that we create, by using Putty, we connected to that. But we have already IP and username and password. Can we connect like a remote desktop for Ubuntu?
I don't actually get it. So what I did, I created the Linux VM.
Yeah,
and
you
then,
created. Yeah, you connected with Putty.
Yes.
So that is a command line interface. Can we
Yes.
connect the Ubuntu user face interface system?
You mean graphical user interface?
Yeah. Yes.
No. I mean, it is not basically coming up with the graphical user interface. So
Okay.
if you really want, you might need to take a graphical user interface image. So
Okay.
yeah.
So
Banu Venkat is same guy who was here before, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, from starting on the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Prashant, go on.
You mean to say for graphical user interface, we need to choose Ubuntu Linux for virtual machine, correct?
Yeah, so you need to choose other image if you really want to access graphical user interface.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
But nobody basically uses that, in fact. Okay, so then if there are no any questions, I can see there are full participants. I think you people are pretty much interested in this Azure better than this Azure DevOps, seems. Okay, so anyways, I guess I hope you understood
Hello,
it.
Lakshman. Hello, Lakshman.
Yes.
One small doubt.
Yes.
For the before this Azure administration, you teach about the Azure DevOps, like CI/CD.
Yes.
Is there any certification for that?
Yes, there is also a certification for Azure DevOps.
Which certification?
Azure DevOps. Let me just check the number. I forgot. There are really Azure 900. So I guess Azure 900. Let me just see. I think that is only for Azure 500 is a security and 104 is that. And Azure.
I think 400.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true. So yes, it's 400.
Okay.
But guys, don't need it. I don't really recommend to go for it, because unless you are pretty much good at what you are implementing, it is not really recommend. Don't waste your money. But do you really see in Indian market they're asking for the certificates?
Not certificate means, but if you mention in your LinkedIn profile, so you will get
Yeah,
more.
if we mention in the resume, it will add
No,
more weightage.
that's what I'm saying. If you see, I have recruited many people so far, and they are not actually certified at all. I mean, I have also interviewed few people. They are actually pretty much into this certificate. They have done lots of certifications, but when I actually did the interviews, they don't know. In fact, they really don't have that much knowledge that what is really shown. So, in my opinion, if you really have a good understanding of the topics and the way that you know how to design, then that's more than enough. But only the suggestion that don't waste your time if you don't have money. If you have money, you can basically spend. Of course, you can also send it to my account also. That's fine. Okay, then I hope you are pretty much clear with the doubts. Yes. So see you tomorrow then. Yeah.
Yes, Lakshman.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hi, Lakshman.
File.